Welcome to the deep dive. You've shared some fascinating sources with us about ChatGPT, and, well, we know you've likely seen it confidently get things wrong.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Happens all the time.
Right. But what if those mistakes aren't really mistakes in the way we usually think about them?
That's the core question, isn't it?
Yeah. So today we're diving into this study called ChatGPT is Bullshit, and some related stuff to explore a really provocative idea. When ChatGPT just makes things up, is it hallucinating? Is it lying? Or is there something else going on entirely?
Exactly. And look, we know ChatGPT makes errors. That's not the news here.
No.
Our mission today is to really understand the nature of those errors. This deep dive, hopefully, will cut through some of the hype,
Yeah, the
the
noise.
noise exactly, and give you a clearer picture of how these language models actually work, and crucially, what that means for the information they spit out.
So the idea is you'll walk away feeling maybe a bit more clued in and less overwhelmed by all the AI talk.
That's the plan.
Okay, so this paper, ChatGPT is bullshit, it makes a really strong case, doesn't it? That fundamentally, ChatGPT isn't trying to be accurate.
Right. Its main job, its core function, is to generate text that sounds like a human wrote it.
It's all about predicting the next word based on just tons and tons of text data it's processed.
That's the absolute heart of it. You can think of it like um, a super sophisticated autocomplete.
Okay.
Its real strength is spotting patterns in language and then statistically figuring out the most likely next word and the next and the next. It's focused entirely on what sounds right.
On fluency, coherence.
Coherence probability,
Mm.
not necessarily on what is right, factually speaking.
So it's aiming for that human-like quality, even if the facts get mangled along the way. The paper also mentions this temperature thing. How does that fit in?
Yeah, the temperature parameter, that's pretty important. It basically controls how, let's
Right.
say, random or creative the output is.
Okay.
So a low temperature means the model sticks to the most probable, predictable word choices.
Wow.
More focused, less surprising,
Safer, maybe?
safer, exactly. But turn the temperature up and you introduce more randomness, more unpredictability.
Which leads to more creativity.
Potentially more creativity, yeah, more unexpected outputs, but also a higher chance of inaccuracies, of going off the rails factually. It's a trade-off.
Right, a dial you can turn. Okay, so when ChatGPT says something totally made up, but says it with such confidence, the word everyone uses is hallucination.
It's the go-to term, absolutely.
But these authors, they really don't like it. Why is hallucination the wrong word here, according to them?
Well, their main issue with hallucination is what it implies. It suggests, a misperception.
Like it's trying to see reality but getting it wrong.
Exactly, like it's misinterpreting data or its senses are faulty or it's conjuring things up.
Yeah.
But the paper argues very strongly that large language models, LLMs like ChatGPT,
Yeah.
they aren't designed to accurately represent the world in the first place.
Ah, okay. That's a really crucial difference. It's not failing at being accurate.
Because accuracy wasn't the primary design goal. Its purpose is different. Yeah, they put it very clearly in the paper. Let me see if I can find the quote here. The problem here isn't that large language models hallucinate, lie, or misrepresent the world in some way. It's that they are not designed to represent the world at all. Instead, they are designed to convey convincing lines of text.
Wow. So the same process, the same next word prediction.
Produces both the true stuff and the false stuff. The errors aren't glitches or exceptions.
Well, they're just part of the output, a natural result of how it works.
Precisely.
And the paper suggests that using hallucination could actually hinder us, like lead us down the wrong path.
That's a big part of their argument, yes. When we use these human psychological terms like hallucination, we start thinking about the AI in human terms.
Anthropomorphizing it.
Right. Giving it intentions or abilities it doesn't have.
Yeah.
And that might make us look for solutions in the wrong places, like thinking, oh, we just need to give the AI better senses, or let's just feed it more facts.
When the real issue is more fundamental, it's about the design itself.
Exactly. It's about the goal being convincing text, not verified truth.
Okay, this leads us to, well, the title of the paper. The idea that ChatGPT's output is better described as bullshit.
Yeah, it's provocative, but they build a specific case for it.
They draw on the philosopher Harry Frankfurt, right? What's his idea of bullshit and how does it apply here?
So Frankfurt made this really useful distinction. A liar, he says, knows the truth, but deliberately says something false to mislead you about the truth.
Okay, deception about facts.
Right. A bullshitter, though, is different. Frankfurt says the bullshitter is characterized by their indifference to the truth.
Indifference, so they just don't care if it's true or false.
Pretty much. Their goal isn't necessarily to state a truth or a falsehood. Their goal is something else entirely, maybe to persuade you or impress you or just keep the conversation going with plausible-sounding stuff. Truth is irrelevant to their project.
Okay, I think I see the connection. How does that indifference map onto ChatGPT? It's not trying to lie with a specific falsehood.
No, there's generally no specific intent to deceive about a particular fact.
But it also doesn't seem bothered about being correct.
That's the core link. ChatGPT's prime directive is generating convincing text. Whether that text happens to align with reality is, secondary, maybe even irrelevant to its core programming.
So it is essentially indifferent to the truth value of its output.
That's the argument.
Right.
And then the paper distinguishes between what they call soft bullshit and hard bullshit.
Okay, break that down. Soft versus hard.
So soft bullshit is basically just that indifference to truth we talked about, without any specific intent to mislead you about what the speaker or the AI is actually up to.
Just saying stuff without caring if it's true.
Right. Hard bullshit is a step further. It involves an intention to mislead the audience about the nature of the enterprise itself.
Meaning
trying to make the audience believe you are actually concerned with the truth, that you are trying to be accurate when you're really not. Deceiving them about your own intentions or the nature of your communication.
Okay, so applying this, the authors argue ChatGPT is definitely, at minimum, a soft bullshitter.
Yes. Their logic is pretty straightforward. At the very least, ChatGPT isn't designed with the intention of conveying truths.
Because its goal is convincing text.
Right. So if it has no intentions at all, well, it obviously can't intend to convey truth. And if you think it has some kind of functional intention based on its design, that intention is focused on sounding convincing, not on being accurate. Either way, it shows an indifference to truth.
If it's the definition of soft bullshit.
It's the definition. But then they explore the trickier idea. Could it be a hard bullshitter?
And that seems to hinge on whether we attribute intentions to it, specifically an intention to seem like a human having a normal conversation.
That's where it gets more philosophical. They bring in Daniel Dennett's concept of the intentional stance.
Which is?
It's the idea that we can often understand complex systems, even non-conscious ones, by treating them as if they have intentions and beliefs related to their function.
So if ChatGPT's function is to mimic human conversation convincingly,
then, taking the intentional stance, you could argue its design is intended to deceive us about its nature, to make us think we're interacting with something that has beliefs, cares about truth, etc., even if it doesn't in a human way.
Ah, I see. That's where the hard bullshit idea comes in, making us think it's something it's not.
Exactly. There's a quote from the paper that captures this. Programs like ChatGPT are designed to do a task, and this task is remarkably like what Frankfurt thinks the bullshitter intends, namely, to deceive the reader about the nature of the enterprise in this case, to deceive the reader into thinking that they're reading something produced by a being with intentions and beliefs.
Wow. Okay, that really reframes things. It's not just about random errors anymore. It feels more structural.
It's about the fundamental design and purpose, yes.
So why does this matter so much? Why push for bullshit instead of hallucination? What are the real-world implications, according to the paper?
Well, the authors argue pretty strongly that the words we use shape everything, how we understand AI, the policies we create, even how developers approach fixing problems.
Right. Language isn't neutral.
Not at all. And calling these errors hallucinations, they argue, feeds into the hype cycle. It makes the AI sound more advanced, maybe more mysterious than it is.
And could lead to trying the wrong fixes.
That's their point. Like the example of just connecting LLMs to databases. If you think the problem is hallucination, a faulty perception, maybe more data seems like the answer.
But if the core engine is just generating probable text, more data won't necessarily change that.
Exactly. It might still generate convincing-sounding nonsense, just maybe incorporating facts from the database sometimes. The paper actually quotes something on this.
Yeah.
Calling chatbot inaccuracies hallucinations feeds into overblown hype about their abilities among technology cheerleaders and could lead to unnecessary consternation among the general public. It also suggests solutions to the inaccuracy problems which might not work.
So bullshit, while maybe harsh-sounding, is potentially more useful.
More accurate and more useful, they argue. It highlights the inherent unreliability, the lack of actual truth-seeking. It helps set more realistic expectations for users. You know what you're dealing with.
And we've certainly seen the need for realistic expectations, haven't we? The real-world examples really drive this home.
Absolutely. That lawyer using ChatGPT for legal briefs.
And citing completely fake cases, that was bad.
Really bad. Or researchers finding fabricated references in academic papers generated by AI. These aren't just funny quirks. They have serious consequences.
And thinking of them as hallucinations might make us less critical than we should be.
Possibly.
Oh,
It downplays the fact that this kind of output is intrinsic to the system, not just an occasional mental slip-up. Calling it bullshit forces you to confront that indifference to truth head-on.
now the paper also mentions another term people sometimes suggest, confabulation. What's the issue with that one?
Yeah, they touch on confabulation. In psychology, that's about filling in memory gaps without intending to deceive. Seems plausible at first glance, maybe.
A bit less loaded than hallucination.
Perhaps. But they have similar reservations. First, it's still a human psychological term, so you risk that same anthropomorphism.
Right.
And maybe more importantly, it kind of suggests these errors are exceptional, like filling a gap. But the authors argue inaccuracies aren't exceptions for LLMs. They're part of the standard text generation process. It's not filling a gap. It's just generating the next probable word, which might happen to be wrong.
So, not an occasional memory fill, but standard operating procedure.
That's the idea.
Which brings us back to the paper's framing. Thinking of ChatGPT less as something that hallucinates or confabulates, and more like bullshit machine.
Yeah, the bullshit machine concept.
What does that add? What's the nuance there?
It emphasizes that even if the AI itself has no human-like intentions, the whole setup, its design, how it's trained, how people use it, results in the production of bullshit.
So the output is bullshit, regardless of the AI's internal state or lack thereof.
Exactly. The text appears to be about something, making claims, but it's generated with that fundamental indifference to truth. And often, let's be honest, the users might not be prioritizing absolute truth either. They might just want plausible text quickly.
That's a fair point.
And they contrast it with something like, say, a word processor. A word processor is a tool for writing, but it doesn't have this inherent tendency to generate plausible but potentially untrue statements based on statistical patterns.
It's a more neutral tool. ChatGPT has a specific character, a way of operating.
A specific way of operating that makes it effectively a machine optimized for producing bullshit, in Frankfurt's sense.
Okay. So wrapping this up, the big takeaway seems to be this fundamental mindset shift.
Yeah.
We need to stop thinking of ChatGPT as a slightly flawed knowledge source.
Just start seeing it as a very sophisticated text generator whose primary goal is convincingly mimicking human language patterns.
Accuracy is a byproduct, sometimes achieved, sometimes not, but not the core objective.
Precisely. Its inaccuracies aren't bugs in a truth-seeking process. They are inherent outcomes of its text generation process.
And understanding that is really key to not being misled, isn't it? To engaging with this technology more critically.
Absolutely essential.
This has been, quite a shift in perspective. Really makes you think. So for you listening, here's something to chew on. Now that you've heard this argument that ChatGPT is fundamentally indifferent to truth, how does that change how you'll use it or how you'll evaluate the information it gives you?
And maybe think about the responsibility, too. What responsibility do users have or developers in managing this output, this potential flood of AI-generated bullshit?
Big questions. And definitely worth thinking about.
Definitely. And if you want to dig deeper, Harry Frankfurt's original essay on bullshit is quite short and very readable. Or, of course, check out the research paper itself that framed this whole discussion.
Excellent suggestions. Thanks so much for walking us through this today.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating and important topic.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's given you some valuable food for thought. If you've got other topics or sources you'd like us to tackle, please do send them our way.